Welcome to 78.4, the podcast that helps you leave a godly legacy for future generations by showing you the incredible things God has done in the lives of men and women around the world. If He can do those things in these people's lives, imagine what He can do in yours. I'm Bob.
And then I must be Matt.
You must be.
You're Bob, so I'm Matt. There's only two. So today we're going to talk about how to be a good servant, which, sounds kind of weird in a society that wants to have it all, be on top, get the most hits, run their own life. In fact, next week, we're going to talk a little about that, how to be a good godly leader. But a crazy thing happens in the Bible where it seems that understanding first how to be a great servant is a key component to eventually being a great leader. And that being a great leader, in turn, makes you even better at serving.
I knew a guy named Dave Horsey who'd been with Crew for more than 40 years. And I didn't get to work with him all that much. But when I did, he was always there in the service of different leaders. Anyway, when he died, his daughter asked if I would record the military honors presented at his memorial service. And I don't even think I knew he'd been in the military. Well, come to find out, he'd been an officer. And I think he was a captain in the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And he commanded a training base before he became a missionary. Dave was a man who commanded men, many men, and yet he left that to become a servant.
Right.
I guess it takes a true leader to be a great servant, and it takes humility to be a great leader.
Right. And that crazy thing that happens in the Bible that I said before,
Yeah.
It's best illustrated in Jesus. The Son of God didn't come to be served,
Exactly.
but to serve. That a leader serves. And that all culminates, spoiler alert, on the night Jesus knew He was going to die for our sins. I mean, that's the ultimate in serving. And He literally started the Last Supper of His life washing His disciples' feet.
Which was the absolute lowest job anybody could do. Rabbis, like the disciples who followed a rabbi, would do everything for him except wash his feet. And even someone who had slaves, only the lowest slave would wash the feet of the people coming into the house.
Right. So I'm going to go ahead and say that as unpopular as serving others sounds in this day and age, if it's good enough for Jesus, it should be good enough for us. And not just that we're cool with serving, but serve well and serve others how Jesus served us is kind of important to this Christianity thing, I think. I mean, the difference in getting bad service at a restaurant and great service is dramatic. Both are servers. But one, they memorize your order. They get your drinks before your cup finishes, right? That's important. The food comes out timely, tastes perfect. Bad service, I'm sure everyone's had it at some point. You feel like you're in like the seventh realm of hell. That Satan's playing tricks on you. No, I'm serious. This is terrible. When it's bad,
you were such a connoisseur.
Well, when it's bad, it's bad. You're waiting 30, 40 minutes to even get the drinks. You haven't even
all of that for not getting a toy with your Happy Meal?
It's not. Yeah, and it reminds me of a Steve Martin classic.
The Waiter.
Called Absent-Minded Waiter. And if you haven't seen it before, you look it up right after you listen to this podcast, where you order a steak and you end up with a stack of lips and water down your pants. Again, learning to serve isn't enough. It's learning how to serve well that's equally important. So in this episode, we're going to hear from 3 servants of the Lord, where they'll cover the importance of serving well with humility, using your God-given talents for the Lord and others, and trusting that God is in control no matter how your leaders screw up.
And that brings us to our first friend today, Josh McDowell. Josh, as you may know, is an internationally renowned speaker and author. For 10 years, he led humanitarian work to children's hospitals, orphanages, and schools throughout Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine, back when the Soviet Union collapsed in the 90s. The influence he's had on people all over the world is staggering. But God took him on an unexpected route to get him to the point that he could serve like that today.
Right. You wouldn't have thought that from the story you're about to hear that he ended up where he was.
Exactly. So let's listen to Josh.
My dream was teaching at the Institute of Biblical Studies. Come on, I'm a seminary graduate, everything, and that's my dream. You know, the first 2 to 3 years on staff, I never once taught anything. Never once taught a seminar or everything. I remember the one time here I so wanted to speak and all these guys, and I couldn't. I had to pack the lunches for everybody going down to Newport Beach to witness. And I remember I got so upset with it, and a number of sandwiches, I took the Holy Spirit booklet and the 4 laws and I stuck it inside the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I can't believe it, somebody down there hungry. Oh, and open it up, and there's a Holy Spirit booklet. And maybe God spoke to him through it, I don't know. But I was up in Canada, and they'd invited me to do How to Study the Bible in the Book of Romans at Institute of Biblical Studies at Arrowhead Springs. I thought, oh my gosh, I've died and gone to heaven. I prepared, every moment I had free from directing the ministry, I prepared. It was all set. 2 days before I was to leave, I get a call from the man, Bill Bright. He said, Josh, we have an emergency. Salmonella had broken out and everything. He said, we got 800 coming in from all over the world, and they're going to close us down. Come down here. I want you to direct the grounds with 100-some summer staff. I said, Bill, I'm teaching IBS. Oh, you can do that another time. You get in the car and get down here. I got in the car, drove down. Every mile I got madder and madder and madder. And I did it. I whipped those 120-some students, volunteers together, and we got, every day we had to clean those toilets. I was referred to as Colonel Commode. And all the time during IBS, I was cleaning toilets and washing floors. And you know, I was getting madder and madder and madder. And Billy Graham came to speak. The place was jammed because of all of our international staff, thousands of U.S. staff, and I was all set to go. And I'll never forget, first time I met Billy Graham, I had a plunger in one hand and a bucket of toilet stuff in the other hand. Billy Graham took a look at me, and Bill Bright said, this is our director at University of British Columbia in Canada. And Billy Graham must have thought, oh, wow, they were willing to do anything. I wasn't. And so I put it down. I took my hands like this, and I reached out, and Billy was hesitant, and I grabbed his hand and shook it. It was the Billy Graham. So they went into Bill's office. I went down, and I was all free to go hear Dr. Graham. Oh, I was so excited. Finally got a break. Well, they had just paved the pavement with tar, asphalt. And they had a brand new red rug in what was called the Wani Room. The room with all the glass windows looking out over the city and all. Somebody, a knucklehead, totally led of the Holy Spirit, got out of the car, walked through that parking lot with all that tar, walked right into Arrowhead Springs Hotel, left his black marks all the way out to the Wani Room to the right and outside. And you just saw these black marks. That happened just as Bill Bright and Billy Graham would come down home. And of course, Bill Bright saw this. Oh, my hotel, it's ruined. And he grabbed me by the arm and said, Josh, go get that stuff, that can that will get this off. You got to do it before it's dry. Do it right now. Get it all off right now. And he walked out. I thought, you got to be kidding. I don't want to do this. I did it. And I got that can, and I poured it, and I scrubbed. I probably had 3/4 of it all off. I mean, it looked nice. And I'd had it. I said, that's it. I said, I want to speak. I want to teach. I've got a seminary degree, everything. I don't want to do this. And finally I said, that's it. And I remember I got up. I walked over to the front desk of the hotel, and I hadn't put the cap on the thing, and I slammed it down, and I just yelled, I've had it. Well, when it hit, that liquid went all over the place. They had these mail slots there. All the letters were soaked with this. The guy and the girl behind the thing soaked, I was. And as I slammed that down, it was like a bolt of lightning hit me of God speaking to me. And he said, Josh, if I can wash their feet, why can't you scrub their toilets and clean their floors? I don't know what happened, but something happened then. I turned around and I became probably to this day one of the happiest staff members of Cru that has ever existed. I went out of my way that summer to find things to do. Problem is, I went down and painted what was known as the steam calves, and poor Vonette hit the ceiling. She said, we just spent all this money to have them painted. I said, Vonette, it was ugly. We paid all this. I said, and she didn't talk to me for a week. I ruined what this professional designer came in to design, and I just went down and painted the whole. I just wanted to serve. But, life is attitude and choices. And my attitude changed, which affected the choices that I made. And after that, I became one of the top speakers, top teachers in Crusade and all over the world, to where I've given 25,000 talks in 118 universities, 13,000 airplane flights. But it all started with God speaking to me. If I can wash their feet, why can't you scrub their toilets? Because if your life, in the greatest inner kernel of your life, doesn't reflect your walk with Jesus, then it will affect your witness for Christ, for sure.
If I can wash their feet, why can't you scrub their toilets and clean their floors?
Right.
That whole scrubbing toilets thing was a lesson that went way beyond Josh. My wife's first assignment when she came on staff with Cru was with the Josh McDowell Ministry. She told me that whenever she or any of her coworkers had to do something that they didn't necessarily want to do, but it had to be done, they'd say, well, if Josh can scrub toilets, I can do this. I can do whatever.
Right. No one wants to clean toilets. When you get a job, when you're good at something, you want to do that. So when you're asked to do something you don't feel called to do, you naturally bristle at it. I get it. I remember my first job out of college was as a video editor. And the first 2 weeks that I was there, the guy had me painting his edit suites. And I was secretly, not happy about that.
Secretly?
I think I hit it pretty good, but I was not happy. And I'm like, I'm not here to paint. I'm here to edit. So when we look at our lives as what my particular job is, you can get that mentality. It makes sense. But what if you didn't see your job title as, but I'm an editor, or I'm a barber, or I'm an accountant, I'm a fill in the blank. But instead, your job is to serve God and others. Then, whatever task God gives you, your boss gives you, your husband or wife gives you, it can be anything as long as it helps, if you see it that way. So painting the building, it helped. It helped my boss's building. It made everything look good when people and clients come over. And definitely, anytime you are loving and helping serve others in any way that God puts in front of you, that act helps people to love God better as they see God's love through your actions. Which brings us to Ella Crockett. She has one of the unglamorous jobs. She's not the big speaker, the CEO strategist, the one out front. But she found that serving those as an administrator is just as needed and called by God as any position God could gift you with.
You might think administration doesn't have anything to do with Great Commission or anything else, but let me tell you, I think that behind every good boss is a great secretary. And it was a thrill to be able to help them while they went off to tell another part of the world about Jesus Christ. So administration is important because you have a part in the big picture. And so I love administration. I like seeing a project finished. I like seeing things accomplished through what I'm doing so that the gospel can even be spread further. I wouldn't trade my job for anything, because not only do I like to travel, but I also like to serve. I've probably been in 60 plus countries of the world. And I got so excited that a little me from Tangier Island out in the middle of Chesapeake Bay could have an impact in other countries and be able to see the Lord use my gifting to help other people. A lot of people think that if you're a secretary or an assistant, that's a low job. But I would encourage anyone out there, if you have some ability as far as typing skills, as far as taking notes, minutes, making hotel reservations, whatever, that you can use it for God's glory. And what a thrill to know that because I've got administrative skills that God has equipped me with, that what I was doing, the impact I was having, was impacting the world for Christ.
I love how she not only doesn't diminish her position, but she sees it for what it is. It's her gifting that God gave her to be great at, to help tell people about Jesus, that she serves in the God administration, and there's no bad job in working for God. My favorite chapter in the Bible, Bob, is 1 Corinthians 12, where God says there is one body, but many parts. We can't all be the mouth, the feet, the hands, but every part supports the entire body and is needed and is necessary for the whole body to work. We make up the body of Christ, and whatever part you play is important. And serving makes up a crucial role. It's what holds everything together. Serving, I realize, Bob, is the ligaments of the body. Nothing works without those parts that support the hands, the feet, the mouth. So I love how Ella sees that, and not only sees that, but makes it her purpose to do her best to serve well every single day.
Ella, her role is in the administrative deal, and yet she came in at a crucial time for me and Leah, my wife, when it was during a big conference, and I was having to provide almost all of the video for that conference. And so I had been working 30-hour shifts and had not seen my family for the most part for the longest time as I was getting ready for this, and was just exhausted. And we flew out to the conference, and when we got there, I had another role to do. My middle son, Sean, was at that point, he was just an infant. I never saw him awake that entire 2 weeks because I would have to be at work before he got up, and I would get home way after he'd gone to bed. And it was just a hard time. At the end of the time, we knew we had to get up and clean out this apartment we were in and head back home. It was such a daunting task because at that point I was exhausted. Leah was exhausted, having had pretty much single momming it all that time, and just a high stress time. And Ella brought a crew in, and they cleaned our apartment for us so we could leave. That just spoke volumes to us of care when we really needed it.
Right. Those people are, you don't think about them, but none of it works without them. And I love how Ella sees that, and not only sees that, but makes it her purpose to do her best and serve well every single day, no matter who asks.
Oh yeah, she does. All right, now here's a different side of it.
Yeah.
What if you were doing everything you can to serve well,
Right.
but your boss is a total bozo?
Bob, you're my boss.
There's a big if in there.
Okay, so this is hypothetical, and this is just I have a boss, but not you. Total bozo, not Bob. And wait, let's see. Okay, so I got it. Let's see. So total bozo, not you, but I'm serving well. Good. That sounds like me. I serve well. Go. So total bozo.
Next week, when somebody new and I do 78.4.
Next week you'll hear, I'm Bob, and I must be Tom.
Nah.
Okay.
Okay.
So hypothetical.
Hypothetical.
I'm doing well.
What
bozo
if you're serving a hypothetical boss who is a total bozo?
boss. Okay.
Or if your hypothetical boss
Right.
is well-meaning but not making the best decisions. How can you serve well under those circumstances? Our final friend is Bill Sundstrom, and he's got some real experience in this. Not necessarily the bozo part, but definitely in not agreeing with his boss. Let's listen to Bill.
After I'd been on staff for Cru, I actually had requested to go to the University of Wisconsin in Madison to work full-time with international students. And I was pretty sure that was going to happen for a number of reasons. Instead, my new assignment came, and I was assigned to travel with a ministry called Paragon Experience, which was quite a surprise. And back then in our organization, there was really no option. You either accepted your assignment without question, or you left staff. You quit. And I have felt very strongly that God had asked me to join this organization, and I did not feel him saying it was time to leave. And Paragon, this was in the late 70s. Paragon Experience was a ministry of the time that used 3 large screens, 9 slide projectors, 1,000 slides. And the story was told through the lyrics of songs of popular artists. We used groups like Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Black Sabbath, Jim Croce, to communicate the message of God's love. And it was quite a dramatic show. But when it came to the University of Rhode Island, where I was working, I was in charge, and it did not go well. It went over like a lead balloon. It flopped. And I did not like the show. Plus, I didn't like loud rock, heavy rock music. So I didn't like the music. I was not interested in technology. I was not interested in traveling. There was nothing about this that was me. And yet it was my assignment. I was praying about what to do because I really did not want to do this. It was just totally not the right fit, not what I liked. And at that time, as God would have it, I was reading through the book of Genesis in the Bible. And I came to the story of Joseph, where he is sold into slavery. And eventually he has a chance to, his brothers come asking him for help. And he basically tells them, you meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. And I realized, I thought, if God can use for good what man means for evil, how much more can God use for good what man means as an honest mistake? Our leaders are not perfect. I'm a sinful person, they're sinful people. I make mistakes, they make mistakes. And they don't always make the right calls, simply because it's the nature of human nature. And yet, I really believe that in a Christian organization like ours, I can be sure that our leaders are really seeking God's will. Maybe they hear God's voice wrong, but they're at least trying to follow God, whereas in other organizations, I would never be sure of that. And that has helped me over the years in many different situations to say, I don't really understand this, I don't like this decision. In fact, I think it's a very wrong decision. But I can trust God with it. And I'm going to trust that you are at work and trust that you will use this for good in some way that I can't even begin to imagine. As I mentioned, I didn't really like the music, I didn't really like the show. And yet, by the end of my time, just in terms of the outreach, I felt it was really a privilege to be able to be a part of it. And I spent 2 years traveling all around the United States. Then I spent a year traveling all around Europe, running the show, and it's fun and it's exciting. And I did get to like the music after a while, by the way. As time went on, I liked it. And I began to realize as time went on that I was having the chance to explain the message of God's love to tens of thousands of people in a way I never would have been able to do on my own. And that turned out to be a turning point in my life because it opened the doors to much of what I've become in life, whether I've become a journalist, I've been involved in communications, I've traveled widely to serve in other countries, gave me a passion for other countries. It goes on and on and on, but it really all goes back to, I think, when I said, okay, God, I don't understand this, I don't like it, but I'm willing to do it and trust that you will use it for good in some way. And so the idea of God as this great, majestic king on high, ruling over all nature, all creation, is very exciting to me to think that's who I serve and put my sword at your service. Send me where you would. So that's been extremely helpful to me. I think when you're in any organization for many, many years and decades, you're going to have disappointments. And that lesson helped me through many of the disappointments along the way to trust that God is working through my leaders even when I don't understand.
Now I realize that even though Josh, Ella, and Bill are all involved in full-time Christian ministry, most folks aren't.
Right.
More than likely, you work in an industry that's focused on making a profit, not making disciples. And that's cool because God calls us to all sorts of different things. He calls some people into full-time ministry. He calls others to serve him in the work world or in ministering to your family at home. All of that is crucial, and God calls each of us to these different areas.
Right.
The question is, can any of these lessons apply to you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. First of all, you have to recognize the sovereignty of God. Bill said, I may not like the decision, but I can trust God.
Right.
The key to work and the key to life is understanding that God is sovereign, and he has a plan. He placed you where you are for a purpose, and part of that purpose is to be an ambassador to the folks around you. In the 3rd chapter of Paul's letter to the Colossians, Paul talks about putting to death the old you and being like Christ in everything you do. He says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. People are watching.
Right.
How in the world is anybody gonna be drawn to Christ if you don't act like him?
Right. And it's funny because Bob and I, a little behind the scenes here, we kind of think about what we're going to say before, but we don't tell each other. And so what Bob doesn't know is Bob was going to say that exact same verse. And I think it's because it's kind of important, that it's kind of key to serving well. That if everything my wife asked me to do, or my kids need, or my boss asks, or my church needs from me, if we see that as an opportunity to help the God of the universe show his love and care to others, if we see each job, even scrubbing toilets, as holy because we're doing it for God and we're doing it well, then serving in any capacity becomes the greatest honor God can give us in life.
You're right. Josh talked about how offering his work to the Lord changed his entire perspective on serving and paved the way for greater things in his life. Ella talked about the behind-the-scenes folks who play an integral part in the big picture. And Bill reminded us that when we serve God, and God is also working through those who lead us, imperfect though they may be.
Right, and when we serve, we're modeling Christ.
Exactly.
Or Jesus himself says the greatest show of love that any of us can ever do is to lay down your life for your friends, which is what he did. But it's our job to lay aside our desires, your need to control everything, and know that our truest job in life is to simply love God and love people. And that's best shown when we serve. So that wraps up today's episode on how to serve well.
Our hope with 784 is that it'll help you grow in your relationship, and not just grow, flourish in your relationship with Jesus. In our show notes, we have links to articles and other resources that'll help you better flesh out this idea of serving. And you know what? One of the things I'm going to do this time around, I mentioned earlier Dave Horsey. I'm going to include a video with him so you can hear him talking about being a servant as well. It's got some really profound things in there. So please check out the show notes. Also email us. We'd love to get to know you.
And the audio you heard today comes from some of the more than 600 and growing videos on our website, legacy.cru.org. That's legacy.cru.org. We also have a YouTube channel, Cru Legacy, and a Facebook page, so please check it out. And if you like today's podcast, we ask that you please subscribe so you can get the next one and the next one and the next one. Also, please rate us. It helps others hear about our podcast.
784 is a podcast of Legacy, a project of Cru.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week, and while we're away, we want to encourage you to remember that whatever God did in the lives of the people you heard speak today, He can do in you. So until we're together again, go out there and continue the legacy.